Welcome back and thank you for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Busiku. It being the Youth Week, we're going to be talking about human trafficking right here in Uganda and elsewhere in the world. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime indicates that 24.9 million people worldwide are under bondage of some kind. Sex enslavement, date bondage, and yes, enslaving of people to work for free. Commercial sex, all that has been included in the report by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes. Remember, to be a human trafficking victim, you don't have to leave your area. You don't have to leave your hometown. You don't have to leave your country. It could be happening to you right now. Now, to make sense of this and a lot more, I'm now joined by the Executive Director of RENA Uganda, Dr. Annette Chirabira. She's not alone. She's also joined by Jessica Birungi. She's a youth advocate at GAA Rahab Uganda. Thank you, many thanks for joining us right here on Morning at NTV. Let me start with you, Annette. What is human trafficking and what are the common types of trafficking? Let's start there for my viewers.
You even already dived into what trafficking is. I like the fact that you emphasize that you don't have to live here for trafficking to happen. But anyway, just briefly for everyone to understand what trafficking is about, it's not even about movement, but it's about harboring or having a person or moving a person or receiving a person through different means. They could be fraud, deception. The common ones in Uganda really have been deception, and for purposes of exploitation. And the exploitation could be all the things you talked about. It could be sex trafficking, it could be labor trafficking. In very generic terms, that's what I can say. There are technical terms given our Trafficking in Persons Act that broadens that definition. But trafficking is about exploitation. I think people need to understand, because sometimes people say, but labor, everyone works. Yes, everyone works, children work, but the game changer for it to turn into trafficking, it's about exploitation. So you harbor somebody, or you move someone, or you receive someone through certain means, especially for adults, through deception or fraud or coercion or force, for purposes of exploitation. And the exploitation goes into sexual exploitation, labor exploitation. For Uganda, child sacrifice, sacrificing children is tantamount to child trafficking, for child marriage, for, you know, all those kinds of exploitation that we have seen in Uganda.
For the benefit of my viewers who are watching this show right now, let's compound on the factors. Sex trafficking, forced labor, and debt bondage. How do they manifest? Let's start with sex trafficking.
Okay. They're layered, and they can be multifaceted. A person could be hired for their labor, but then in that labor, sex exploitation can also be embedded.
Yes.
So you could be hired for labor, but exploitation means maybe the working hours, the conditions, basically you're exploited. You're not paid or underpaid, or the volume of work. And then for sex trafficking, it's really in prostitution. You're prostituting somebody's body, and you know, the trafficker is getting the proceeds. It doesn't really matter sometimes, even when the victim gets a bit of the profits. Debt bondage is a situation where somebody tags a price. I'll use an example. Sometimes we see people traveling abroad. We know that there is legitimate going to work, but also we know, you all know that every time you have a genuine, you're creating a space for the counterfeit. And so we know that people have been trafficked, and they've been told, oh, don't worry, I'll pay for your passport and your ticket, and people are very excited, and I'll place you. We'll deduct the money slowly by slowly. And when you arrive, they say, you owe us 6,000. That is the situation of debt bondage. You have a debt, and because you have a debt, you're bound to this person who is exploiting you or who is employing you.
So you have to sleep with thousands of men to pay up the debt.
To pay up the debt, or to work under very harsh conditions. And usually labor and sex trafficking, exploitation tend to go together. Somebody looks at a kid, they're there, and then they feel they can satisfy their sexual urge. The kid is cleaning, so they're already exploited under labor, but then also somebody takes advantage of them sexually. It could be an adult, a young man. You're under labor exploitation, and then somebody also exploits you sexually. Or a young lady, like we've seen the videos, we've listened to all those things. So sometimes they are layered, and they are multifaceted. there are some circumstances where you can find labor trafficking standing alone and sexual exploitation standing alone. But sometimes there's an interface and it becomes complex. Yeah.
It's really terrible. In Europe, I was reading an article and they were saying a lady was trafficked, yes, and taken to Europe. Yeah, the trafficker did ask for between 60 to 80,000 US dollars. So get this, the trafficked victim had to sleep with thousands of men to pay up the date. So that means even if you don't pay up the date, you might even die in bondage. And the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is saying the COVID-19 pandemic has done more harm than good. Why? Because when we institute all these preventive measures, when we shut down the airport, the borders, there are some people that we are locking out somewhere and they are continuing to suffer in silence. But what about Uganda? Have we had any cases of human trafficking whatsoever? Let me also bring in Birungi. It's the Youth Week and would like to know, what are the youth saying? Have we registered any incidences of human trafficking at this time during COVID-19?
Yeah, we have registered a lot of cases in this time of the pandemic. Yes, because yes, as I've told you, have registered a lot of cases, and then these cases have come up due to the situation, because we all know that, especially like we are not in school, like children at home, our parents have not been working, like even the transport system. Yes. So this thing. You may find a family, maybe a mother a single mother having something like 5 children, but then this mother is not earning, she is not working. And then what do you think will happen next to these children, and especially the girls?
When they go to the streets to look for something.
Yeah, so they'll end up going out, maybe to find food, to look for food and all that. And then this will expose them to traffickers. Yeah, and they end up being trafficked. And then recently in Busoga, we have some cases like some young girls have been impregnated, but I don't think they don't want. It is just because of what they are going through right now, because they don't have what to eat, and then there is this pressure at their home. So they are ending up going to maybe to look for food in other people's home, maybe to do other things, and then young men are impregnating them. Yeah.
Do you think the COVID-19, the measures we've instituted to prevent the spread of COVID-19 have actually made human trafficking worse in the country and have made the identification of these victims very, very hard?
I beg your pardon?
You know, we instituted, at the height of this pandemic, we instituted measures to stop the spread of COVID-19. Stay in your house, don't move, the airport is shut down, the borders are shut down. Do you think all these measures that were instituted actually exacerbated the spread of, the scourge of human trafficking in the country?
Yeah, because yes, the borders are being closed, but still we all know that trafficking is in and outside. You can be trafficked from maybe Busoga to Kampala, from Jinja to Kampala. Yeah. For example, me, I'm a victim I'm a victim. I was trafficked from Jinja to Kampala. So I don't think that.
When was this?
It was 2009.
Okay, before the pandemic. Go ahead.
Yeah, before. So, but still today, I brought this like to show you that yes, the borders have been closed, but this has not stopped the trafficking, because the pandemic has increased the trafficking instead. Yes, children have been trafficked from maybe Kalamoja to the city to do labor, commercial sector and all that.
In a way, Birungi is saying that COVID-19, the measures that we've put in place have actually exacerbated the risk of people being trafficked. It's hard to identify people who are being trafficked if they're confined in their houses, and it makes it easier for the traffickers to keep their victims locked up, because there is also a worldwide measure that is giving them the leeway to do so. Let me also bring in Brenda, Uganda, to also expound on this. The people in the diaspora, the people who had left the country to go and do some work in the diaspora, some of them, their visas expired, and we are getting information that they could be subjected to exploitation now that those visas have expired. Are you getting the same information?
Most definitely. Even before airports were closed, people don't understand that it's easier to leave the country and to return.
Yes.
Coming back is very, very complex. Now that the airports are closed, we all have a forced standstill. Nobody can move. So most definitely, if you've had situations of exploitation where you're working, you're trapped with your exploiter. You're trapped with your perpetuator. That increases your frustration, your desperation. Some of them are not earning because they'll also tell them we are not earning. So you are already maybe not earning, or you are earning little, and now you're not earning at all. Most definitely, people are desperate. People are on the streets. People are crying. They're trying to get back. And besides that, they also still need to stay safe from the pandemic, because it doesn't mean because you're frustrated on one side, COVID will not spread. So COVID is spreading. So you're trapped. There are lots of trauma, traumatic experiences. They are layered. They are complex. There's nowhere to run to. Even the solutions are not that quick and that fast. And what also makes it very complicated, most of the people who are out there, they send videos, but you don't have enough information to actually trace the person, or they can't reach our embassies. So we have gaps. Or an embassy is in Riyadh serving Oman, and people are far distanced. So yeah, they're suffering. We must be ready to provide trauma healing for our people, because the pandemic itself is traumatic. Being trapped with your perpetuator is traumatic. Just the fact that you can't move actually and go home when you want. Even if you're here in Kampala, just imagine if they closed the studio and said you actually can't go home. Your stress levels begin to just think about you being locked down in a situation of exploitation, and you run out of resources. Maybe you're ill and you can't even move, and you're even afraid to move because of the spread of the pandemic. So we are really, really facing the Ugandans out there, not only Ugandans, but for now we're talking about Ugandans. They're facing a complicated situation.
Okay, let's break down the victims themselves. Who is most at risk for falling prey to human trafficking?
I like to start with saying that anybody desperate is prey to trafficking.
Desperation is the biggest problem.
Yes. You could be here desperate for greener pastures.
And COVID-19 is making it worse.
Oh yes, and you could be trafficked because they'll promise you, you know what, because you've mastered all this media stuff, let's get you online, and you could be exploited. But we definitely know that for Uganda, we have a big youthful population, most of it dependent. Unemployment is high. We have many people highlight unemployment, but I also want to talk about broken families and communities. It used to take the whole village to raise a child. Now it takes the whole village to exploit a child. We have those kind of scenarios. So the youth are particularly very vulnerable. But what makes them vulnerable, again, is that word I've used, desperation. The trafficker will meet you at your point of desperation. If you're desperate in sophisticated ways, the trafficker will get sophisticated means. If you're desperate in the most basic way, the trafficker will target you at your most basic way. I don't like it when we think it's the poor, it's the whatever. In my work of anti-trafficking, I've discovered that so many people can be trafficked. The game changer is desperation. On the side of the perpetuator, it's exploiting your desperation. But of course, we know that we have populations that are really, really desperate.
All right, Birungi, how do you support human trafficking? I know there's a viewer who's watching and they're like, okay, human trafficking, but how do you support that someone is being abused? How do you support human trafficking? What are the signs?
Some of the signs, because we know that even your own can traffic you, like your parent, your uncle, your auntie can traffic you. But then there are these people who come in and then they claim, come, we go, I get you, or maybe I pay school fees for you, I get your job. So that person is more likely to traffic you, because the person is coming from nowhere. I'm going to get your job, because the person has seen that you're not earning, you're not working, or maybe you're not in school. So this person is like, I'm going to pay school fees for you. So that person is most likely to traffic you. Yeah, and then on top of that, because we have talked about trafficking in this COVID-19, but still before and after this COVID-19, we have some social cultural norms. Yes, they are good, but then some people or some societies and communities have have mishandled them.
Break down the social norms.
The social norms. We have inheritance, because now people think that a girl child can't inherit. So they have entrusted all everything with the boy or the young man, leaving out the girls.
How is that trafficking?
It's not trafficking.
It is a social norm that can easily expose someone to be trafficked. Because now, if I told my mom can't entrust me with...
You have no right to wealth.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, maybe with land and other properties, I'll find my own way of getting my own belongings. And this will push me maybe to go abroad in order to work, and I get something.
I see where you're going.
And I'll be trafficked from that side. I'll be exploited from that
social
side.
norm number 2.
Yeah, social norm number 2. There is community bias. You see, the community or the people in the community have this negative attitude towards girls. They think that we girls, we can't come up and do something. Okay, they look at us as inferiors, so they don't support us. They think that we are useless. So by the end of it all, we feel out of place, and then, yeah, we can easily trafficked and maybe moving up and down because we are not recognized in the society. Yeah, and then number 2, number 3, sorry. Most of the parents think that educating a girl child is actually useless, which is not the case. It is very important, but they think that putting in their own money to educate a girl child is very useless. They are wasting time, they are wasting money. And then they look at us, they think that for us, we are meant to be in the kitchen, cooking, doing domestic work and all that. And by the end of it all, we don't have skills because we acquire a lot from school. We don't have skills to start up maybe something, and then we are just there. So I'll go on looking for jobs, looking for what to do. And remember, these agents are eager, like they are waiting for us. And then they start coming in, come we go.
So you have human trafficking agents within the export companies?
Yeah.
The companies that export workers?
Yeah, they are there.
All right. But I needed to know, how do you do spot human trafficking? Like the case of Birungi, she was trafficked herself. But how did you escape? I think I'll run it to Annette to tell us how do you spot a victim of human trafficking. But how did you escape, Birungi? How did you escape your ordeal? Because so many people cannot have the same luxury.
Yes, so when I was trafficked, that lady claimed to get me, to pay my fees because I was not schooling. So, yes, I allowed because I was like, yes, I'm going back to school. But it wasn't the case. She instead took me to labor, and I was overworking and working day and night. So I didn't know that someone was seeing me or was watching me. She was a social worker. A worker from Rahab, Uganda. Right. So she came to me, she started having this, befriending me, and then telling me about Rahab, Uganda. And after that, I was rescued.
Very amazing story. Yeah. Let's talk to Annette. Annette, how do you spot a victim of human trafficking? What are those general indicators?
I'll start with a disclaimer that victims of trafficking are hidden in plain sight, which makes it very difficult for people to actually identify victims of trafficking. There are few things we know. What she said, what is the person selling you? Sometimes the dream is too good to be true. And so what is being said is very important. Watching dynamics, like she said, somebody was watching her, watching the dynamics of the people. Who is controlling, who in a situation of a child, in a situation, for you like the people who travel abroad. Who is this person who is speaking for them? Who is controlling their movement? Who is controlling their documents? Who is on the bus from Karamoja with the kids? Are they unaccompanied minors? Who are they with? Where are they going? We must ask ourselves questions. We must look with a different eye, read between the lines. What's being said and what's not being said? What do I see and what don't I see? So usually there are control things, and control can come from who is speaking for the person, who controls their resources, who is controlling their movement, who is controlling their resourcing, who is harboring them. And of course we know that there are vulnerabilities. I think I want to just add to what Jessica said. You said that the social norms cause trafficking. That's not true. They create an environment. They feed into push and pull factors. for people to be trafficked. I think we must not do causal relationships, just like that. They are not as simplistic as we are trying to make them. But victims of trafficking are people, they could be unaccompanied minors, but it could also be an adult who somebody else is controlling lots of things around them. Their behavior, their speaking, their income, their documents, and all those kind of things.
Annette Chidabira is the Executive Director of RENA Uganda. Let's talk about recommendations on how we can alleviate the problems of these victims and how we can do away with human trafficking, first of all. Are our anti-human trafficking laws sufficient enough to do their job?
Yes, our law is sufficient. We just want to ask government to enforce it more, implement it more. It requires lots of resources. Trafficking is not an easy thing. It's not like seeing a child who is maybe an orphan and you pick them and put them in school. It's layered and complex, so government needs to resource the implementation and enforcement of the law more. But it's a sufficient law. There are a few things we would want to amend in it. As you grow, the law can also grow and evolve.
Jessica Birungi, what are the youth saying? What do they want government to do for them to alleviate the suffering of the victims of trafficking?
We really call upon the government to provide a special hearing for the youths in order so that they can access justice and judiciary services. Because sometimes someone can be a victim, but someone can't access justice. So we will call upon government to provide us a special hearing for the youths. Yes.
All right, Jessica Birungi and Annette Chidabira, the Executive Director of RENA Uganda, many thanks for having made the time to speak to NTV. At this point in time, we'd like to take you to Chisenyi, where there is an operation, Weyonje, how people are rating themselves